I would love to show you a very nice bullet game played by the world's best player, world's number one, Magnus Carlsen, playing with the black pieces against Vidit. And it was played on chess.com in the Speed Championships. And I think the following bullet game is very instructive. So let's have a look and see how Magnus Carlsen just crushes his opponent in very fascinating style. So Vidit plays with the white pieces, goes for the move 1e4, and Magnus plays the Caro-Kann. Very popular opening. Most people will respond here with the move d4, occupying the center with 2 pawns, but we get to see a very modern treatment of this fashionable opening. Knight f3, d5, attacking the pawn on e4, and now white can of course protect the pawn with knight c3, for instance, but he goes for the move d3, but that allows the exchange of queens. D takes e4, d takes e4, queen takes d1, king takes d1. Now you may think, if you see this for the first time, what is this kind of boring line? White is not playing ambitiously at all, allowing the exchange of queens, giving up the right to castle. But nowadays, okay, this is one of the popular lines for white to just get a playable position. Not too many forcing lines, get a position, middle game without queens on the board. And although it's not a serious test for getting an advantage, you definitely get an interesting game, and usually the stronger player is able to outplay the opponent. So let's see what Magnus does. He plays the move knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4, and now strange move, because the pawn on e4 can be protected in various ways with a knight from b1 or the bishop from f1 going to d3 for instance. So there are various options, but the move played by Vidit is the move knight fd2. This looks very strange at first, because with the knight on d2, you're not enabling your dark squared bishop to join the game. But the idea is that the knight is on its way to the other side of the board. And of course, white would love to protect the pawn on e4 with another pawn by playing the move e4. But of course, these kind of drawbacks, these kind of moves have their own drawbacks as well. And Magnus realizes that white's plan is to play the move f3, so that white gets a very nice pawn chain, restricting the movement of that knight on f6. And now, very nice idea, it's the move g5. So that whenever you go for a move like f3, g4 can always be played, and black will try to put white under pressure on that side of the board. There is this move knight c3 and knight bd7, knight b3. So now the bishop from c1 attacks the pawn on g5, and black goes ahead here with the move g4. Very ambitious play. So black is making already some advances on the king side. Maybe later on the h pawn can follow as well. So interesting idea. I think white may consider a move like h3, so that the rook can possibly join the game as well. But there follow the move f4. So white is trying to ignore that pawn on g4, plays 2 pawns next to each other, but there follows g takes f3, g takes f3, and now the knight comes in to e5. You know, I'm analyzing this game. Don't forget, it's a bullet game, so the guys were even playing much faster, but I'm trying to explain their thinking process. And you know, maybe it goes really fast for you. For these guys, it's just peanuts. It's very easy to see these ideas for both sides at that speed. So knight is attacking pawn on f3. Maybe f4 is an idea to kick the knight out, but of course it also gives away squares, like maybe a bishop can come to g4 or a knight can come to g4. It's an interesting position, but bishop e2 was played, and now knight g6 was played. So the knight anticipates a potential attack by the pawn, and well, I think the idea was that in case white goes for the move f4, you want to respond with e5, getting some sort of grip in the center. If white captures the knight, retakes the pawn, and after f5 there's knight f4, and black is kind of okay in such a position. But instead, there follow the move a4. White is trying to push the pawn to gain some space on that side of the board, but I think this is the moment where Vidit starts losing control over the position, and in particular the dark squares, because with the next move knight h5, black is clamping down on the f4 square. Both knights are excellently placed. After bishop e3, the knight comes to f4. I think that's a very, very good move. It's protected by the other knight. White plays the move h4, intending to go h5 to deflect that knight from g6. But now black seizes the initiative. I mean, he can just respond here by playing h5 himself. That's absolutely fine. But I'm impressed by Magnus, his play. He played move knight g2. He just enters with the knight on g2, hitting the bishop on e3. Bishop goes back to f2, protecting the pawn on h4. And now bishop h6. So look at this bishop. It's covering a lot of dark squares. So the white king is unable to move. h5 was played. I should also point out that the knight is never really going to be trapped on g2. In case of bishop f1, there's always something like knight e3. And I mean, if you give up your dark squared bishop, then you have fantastic squares for your two minor pieces on f4 and e5. So white went for h5, attacking the knight on g6, knight e5, and now knight c5 played, knight to e3. Excellent move. It's a nice check, and of course there are some problems because the king can't really go anywhere. Needs to keep the pawn on c2 defended, but if it goes away, keeping that pawn protected on c2, there will follow a nasty discovered check. For instance, knight g4 could be played in that case. So white has to take, bishop takes, and now black is taking over control over the dark squares. Bishop is a monster, attacks the knight on c5, knight goes back to d3. Various interesting moves are possible. You may keep the knights on the board, trying to build up an initiative against the white pieces, but there followed move bishop d4, which is also fine. Knight takes e5, bishop takes e5, and this bishop can never be challenged by its counterpart. So after king d2, bishop f4 was played. Not sure king d2 was the best move, honestly, but bishop is looking great, not giving white a chance to get a king to e3. So king went back to e1 anyway, and now black gets its other bishop into the game. a5 was played. Still, it's a bullet game. I'm not very impressed by white's play. I don't see the general concept of white's play working out somehow. Castling queenside, so king is safe, and the rook is on the d file. Looks excellent. Maybe rook d1 could be played, but in general, I'm not sure if that really helps. You can exchange one pair of rooks, maybe the other rook will come over. And also, whenever the rook moves away from a1, this pawn on a5 proves to become more vulnerable later on. So king f2 was played, trying to connect the rooks, and white really wants to play something like rook d1 and be able to take back with the other rook. But now, black infiltrates with the rook on d2, hits the pawn on c2, rook ac1, and now the other rook comes to the other open file. So we have two fantastic rooks on the open files, which is putting a lot of pressure. Now knight b1 was played. This is clearly Vidit's plan. He wants to kick the rook out and then later challenge the rook on the g file. Now Magnus played here rook d8. It's a very solid move, but I want to show you a brilliant tactical combination which was missed. Rook g2, sacrificing the rook. After king takes, you take the bishop with check, and you're also threatening to take the rook on c1. If the king goes to f1, now the rook cannot be taken because white is about to take on e2. But bishop c4, guys, this is a great move, protecting the rook and setting up a devastating tactic with cooperation of rook and bishop. Rook on c1 is still hanging, gotta go to e1, offering the exchange, but now it's rook takes c2 with check, and if the king goes away, then the bishop is looking for a way to attack the king with a move bishop d6. There is not much white can do against this move bishop to c5. I mean, you have already one pawn for the exchange, probably another pawn will be taken. White's pieces are not working together well. This looks absolutely crushing. But as said, this was not played. Rook dd8 back, but now rook c to g1. So the rook is saved, and white hopes to exchange some pieces to lighten the pressure. But as said, the rook is no longer on a1. That means the pawn on a5 is a target. Bishop c7. Very nice technical move. That's how Magnus is thinking. He's not calculating too deeply. He didn't go for that very interesting line. He just sees a weakness. I want to attack it. If white protects it, then I'm gonna challenge the base of the chain with the move c5. Obviously, after b takes c5, it's bishop takes a5, and the pawn structure is just awful. These pawns are so weak. Black has created an outside passed pawn, so things are looking absolutely great. Now, in the game there followed c3, pawn takes pawn, white recaptures, bishop d6. Now the pawn on a5 is defended, but the pawn on b4, it's the new weakness. Rook takes g8, rook takes g8. Rook comes over to c1, giving a check. King goes to b8. Now the pawn is saved, so it looks as if Black has managed to escape from the pressure. But now, guys, look. Rook g5 on the board, hitting pawns on the 5th rank. Though the bishop on e2 still protects the pawn on b5. You can see that the rook is excellently placed on this 5th rank. And it has an additional idea as well, because now, look, that knight on b1, it still doesn't do anything. Needs to come back into play. Knight e2 was played here, but now the bishop comes to c5. And here we see another advantage, having the rook on g5. Bishop gives check. And after king to f1, it would be rook g1 with checkmate. Beautiful mating pattern with bishop and rook. Obviously, white doesn't fall for that. Played here the move king to e1. So at least you can block a mating idea with a knight or bishop coming to f1. But the problem now is bishop b4 is played. And here we see the knight is pinned, the pawn on a5 is hanging, rook c2 played. But now bishop takes a5. The pawn is gone and the attack is still going on. No queens on the board. But what should white do? I mean, also pawn on h5 is hanging. That's another problem. White played the move f4, so bishop protects the pawn on h5. But now the rook comes in to g1. There are basically two options because the knight is not able to move. Bishop f1 is the best move. Was not played in the game. I will show you what Magnus would have played in that case. For sure, bishop takes knight. If king takes, the bishop is hanging, so you got to take back with the rook. But then there's bishop c4, and this is a deadly pin. Bishop is hitting the bishop on f1. You can protect it with the rook, but first we take the pawn on b5. We are a second pawn up now. And well, on the next move, rook takes f1. Simplifications are there, and the king and pawn endgame will just be completely winning for black. So, of course, that's not very attractive for white. Instead, they follow the move king f2. Of course, you would like to keep pieces on the board. But now the cute part of this game is shown now, because we see how strong the rook is together with the bishop pair hitting an exposed king. Bishop b6, check. Protecting the rook indirectly thanks to this x-ray, so the king can only come to f3. And now it's bishop g4 with checkmate. I like this pattern with the two bishops and the rook protecting the bishop on g4. This is checkmate. This is just all played in a bullet game. I was very impressed with this game. I mean, everybody has won sometimes a nice bullet game, but the ease with Magnus wins such a games against top players, it's very, very impressive. So I hope you like this game. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and then definitely more bullet games will be covered in the near future as well. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.